Kirsty is past president, myself as president, and Malcolm's president-elect. And between us, we are the presidential team. We're going to talk about the anatomy of the roles themselves, so what involves being a president, talk through the council structure, terms of reference, and the meetings drumbeat, the kind of real kind of structural stuff. A little bit on the impact of the transition towards IFSI and what's happening there, and how that might affect the roles. And then flip across to what it's really like. So the formal stuff's fine, but actually we want to talk about actually how has it been doing this? And then we'll open the floor for further questions and answers and what have you. So that's the basic structure. On with the show. So this is the council structure as it currently stands. Now, hopefully, you're aware that there's a distinction between INCOSE UK as an organisation and INCOSE UK Limited as the actual limited company. Because to start off with, in the middle, we have under the INCOSE UK Limited box, the president, president-elect, past president, and the financial director, and the company secretary, who basically make up the officers of INCOSE UK, the limited company. And then in the wider council, we then have the technical director, outreach, professional development, early careers, and you can see the list down there. So a range of the roles that are all part of delivering INCOSE UK as an actual organisation. I should say, if you want to ask any questions, please put them in the chat on the way through. We can pick them up as we go along. So that's our basic structure. We are, for this year, as you hopefully have seen, introducing a deputy financial director role, which is aimed to give us a transition between the finance directors as they go forwards, because it's a bit of a learning curve to pick it up from a standing start. So by having a deputy in place, we hope to essentially have them work together, transition nicely. And that then becomes effectively a 2 years as deputy, 2 years as their finance director, and step off again. So much the same way as the presidents, where we basically do 2 years, 2 years, 2 years. Now, some of this will change going forwards, but that's how it stands at the moment. In terms of the terms of reference, so the presidential team is 3 positions: president-elect, president, and immediate past president. Of those 3, you're voted in as president-elect, and then you just move across the roles as time goes by. As it says there, it's a 2 years in each post commitment, giving you 6 years altogether. It's quite nice because it means 2 years as president-elect, you kind of get your house training, you kind of learn what's what, you learn how it works. 2 years as president, you're trying to get stuff done, and 2 years as past president, you're, I guess, advising and helping and guiding and gradually stepping back and letting go and breathing a sigh of relief, probably. And as it says there, between us all, we have responsibility for setting direction, setting strategy, and actually managing both the chapter and INCOSE UK Limited as a company. And we are voting members of both the council and also the board of directors for INCOSE UK Limited. So I'm going to ask Malcolm to go through the terms of reference for president-elect.
Hi there, everybody. So I guess the you can read all that. I guess the biggest thing about that is that you become a director of INCOSE UK Limited, so registered at Companies House, and therefore you have some fiscal responsibility. So it's unlike the other council positions, which Ian has talked about. You're on the board of directors of INCOSE UK, and you remain so as you move through. You also get involved in help running the UCAB, the events with the technical director. So one of my focuses at the moment is running up to ASEC, so getting all that in place, ready for November, and I hope we have a fantastic conference. We did pretty well last year coming out of COVID. I hope it's going to be even better this year. And also looking after our groups, our working groups, interest groups, and local groups. And supporting the president at various other meetings and things, and stepping in when needed. But it's not full on.
So on to the president role. So you're in charge. You're leading the whole thing. You get to chair the meetings, all sorts of meetings. As Malcolm said, we're all directors of a UK registered company, so there is a whole business angle here which does need to be thought about. So you're not just running a club, you're running a business. You have to make sure that things are done properly, legal obligations are complied with. What's not on these terms of reference as much as the linkage into the Engineering Council. So we are very much obliged to do a lot of regulatory work now that didn't necessarily feature quite as high as it used to. So there's just a need to make sure that all those regulatory obligations are all met and that things are done as they need to be done so that nothing falls off the rails, which if you're organised and you can plan, it's not a problem. It just means being aware of what's happening when in the year and making sure that things are happening and things are in train. Obviously, there's development of the strategy and having an idea of where you want to go in the future. I mean, we all inherit our predecessors' ideas. We all follow them where they're good, and where they perhaps need to adjustment, we'll adjust. If you have your own things you want to do, you've got 2 years to get it done in. So really, you've got to have a good idea form, because you'll never get there otherwise. You've got to kind of, if you've got these things you wish to do, you have to have it kind of effectively in your head and preferably pre-agreed almost before you start. And then you've got a fighting chance of getting something to happen. There's obviously a lot around making sure we have a team. So appointing people, confirmation people being appropriate, all that stuff features to make sure we have a good set of directors. And in fact, there's a fair bit of activities making sure that we are confident we have people coming through that can be directors that isn't officially in here, but it has to play a part. Obviously, we're very keen on the fiscal responsibility side of life. So we have regular meetings where we discuss kind of where we are with the finances, look at our risks, make sure we're happy and comfortable, and we're taking appropriate action, preferably ahead of time, rather than wandering into surprises and having to make do. You have to link into the Engineering Council and what it can be of engineering, and then you've also got that linkage into the wider INCOSE network. So we get to go on calls with the EMEA sector directors on a fairly regular basis, and also we are the point to talk into the INCOSE board of directors and other chapter leaders. So yeah, it's about leading, it's about managing, it's about getting things happen. To be honest, it's quite good fun. It actually, although there's a lot to do, you've actually got the power to actually make things happen and sort of look at things and say, well, like, we're heading in the right direction, things are definitely going on here, and you get that sense of actually achievement. So I do quite like it. So Kirsty, over to you.
Yeah, you'll see this one goes, it's quite a lot shorter. So this is where you remain as part of INCOSE UK Limited, and you still have that fiscal responsibility. But this is the one where you are steadily letting go. You've had your chance, you've had your 2 years to get your ideas into place. You've handed over to hopefully the person you've steadily mentored into the position behind you, working in close conjunction with them. And now it's about letting go and kind of taking that back seat, but being there to provide the support and advice as necessary. Because by this point, this point of my term, I've only got 5 months left. I've got almost 6 years of experience as one of the presidential team, and all the experience that I had as part of INCOSE UK before that, with the UK Advisory Board. So there's an awful lot of corporate knowledge in my head that hopefully Ian has got most of by now, and Malcolm is slowly grasping the enormity of as we make that changeover. So it's really being there as necessary, putting yourself forward where you think there might need some guidance here, but you're no longer in charge. You are there absolutely as a backstop and advice. Sometimes you get a bit of a project to do, and sometimes you'll be tidying up a few things that maybe you started. But it's really there. We're absolutely there as a support rather than a doer.
Well, having said that, we are trying to give you things to do now. We'll say give you.
Yeah, I've noticed this.
It's giving me, isn't it?
You do tend to get a project or two as past president, because you are the right person to do stuff. And actually, even when you drop off the end of the immediate past president, you're still useful. So we tend to call on these guys as and when, if we've got something important that needs a little bit of sage advice, or there's, we're looking for maybe new directors, or someone's got to represent INCOSE UK, that the actual council can't do. You're always there. You're always part of the team. So you never quite leave. A bit like Hotel California, isn't it? Only slightly less depressing.
Well, that's quite true. I have called upon several former presidents when I've had ideas or things I want to kind of check out and get a little bit of kind of advice check on. So moving on from terms of reference, the next thing I want to talk about is the drumbeat. So this is most of the main key points that happen throughout the year. And obviously we have a kind of annual cycle we work through. So effectively across the top, we've got the board meetings and council meetings. So getting together, actually running INCOSE UK. We have 4 of those a year. They generally happen in these kind of February, June, September and December time slots. And our year end is a financial year end, so it's end of March. Didn't used to be, but it is nowadays. It just makes life a lot easier for reporting purposes. The UK Advisory Board meets sometimes before, sometimes after the board meetings. It just depends on scheduling really, but essentially with those meetings, you're either going to them with a kind of here's what we're about to talk about, what do you think? Or you're getting the here's what we've been talking about at the council meetings, what do you think about that? So there's always that two-way interaction, and part of the president-elect role is to go to UCAB and tell them what's going on and be there to answer questions. Conversely, UCAB send people to the council. In fact, they're invited to attend so they can then be part of the decision-making process. So it's very much a two-way street there. The next thing down there is a little bit around events. So obviously ASEC is pretty much nailed on nowadays in November. But I've just noticed there are other events that happen throughout the year. So there's the International Workshop and International Symposium in late January and somewhere in the June to July time slot. Worth being aware of those because that's where a lot of INCOSE meets together. So if there's things you have to discuss or get approval of or otherwise talk around, they're key points in the year to be aware of, because if you get your timing wrong, you'll never get anyone meeting at the right time to even discuss what you want to discuss. So they are important points in the year to be aware of. And there's usually something in the EMEA sector, either late April or September, October time. It does vary from year to year. So I think next year they're going for a combined conference and workshop at the end of April was the plan. So there's little touch points where you can talk to the wider INCOSE about what's going on and maybe sort of get your bearings on things. Next thing down there is the joint council and UCAB and groups meetings. So in April, we get pretty much the whole leadership together. So it's ourselves, it's the UCAB, it's all the different group leads, ECF as well, all in the same room usually, although COVID did have a few impacts on there. So we usually talk through some bigger meteor issues. So it's quite a good sounding board for internally kind of what people think. And then usually on the day after ASEC, we have a combined council and UCAB meeting, where once again, we'll try and pick up some topics and themes you want to workshop. So it's not a broadcast, it's more of a kind of get together. We'd like to discuss this, what do you think? And sort of use that as an opportunity to really kind of play through with quite often some very sharp minds in the room. So they are definitely worth planning for those meetings because you get them right, you get a lot out of them. And then the bottom then is some of the newest stuff we're now doing around being a PEI. So we have to do our Engineering Council annual license reporting in January. So we submit a report end of January. They then come back to us usually about 3 months later with whatever queries they have, and it kind of runs throughout the year sometimes. We've also got the Royal Academy of Engineering PEC, which is the Professional Engineering Council, I think. It's basically a kind of set of ongoing meetings where they're using the network of PEIs to once again act as a sounding board for what the Academy is doing. But it's also a chance to find out who's doing what in the room. It's quite nice because most people on that call are all CEOs rather than presidents. So what you're really getting is a very nitty gritty of how do you run an institute, as opposed to what's the institute about. And whenever we meet in person, they quite like it because they say that they're not having to discuss the fine points of their discipline at all. They're discussing actually how do you get people to do things? How do you sort out all these institutional issues that you get? So it is quite a nice collective to be part of. And then also on there, we have the joint review boards. So we do all of our professional registration activity in conjunction with the Institute of Explosive Engineers. And we have this thing called the joint review board. And essentially that meets throughout the year to ratify the various decisions around CEng, IEng, and EngTech. So given that professional registration is a key part of being a PEI, it's on here because as a president, you do need to take an interest. It's the thing that sort of helps us differentiate ourselves as a proper institute, is the fact we do the CN and everything else. We've gone quite hands-on. We're hoping that as time goes by and it settles down, it'll be a thing the professional development director can largely look after, and we'll need less presidential involvement. But as we were starting it up, we were very keen, all three of us, to get involved and really make sure it got off to a good start. So that's the drumbeat. There's a few other things to do as well, but that's the kind of main sort of things that go on that structure the year. You're hopefully aware of our transition towards being the Institute for System Engineering. It's what we have in train at the moment. It's one of my grand ideas that hopefully will come to pass properly. That's currently in progress. We're in discussion with Companies House. There's a few things we need to do around being allowed to use the word institute, but all the advice we have is that we should be fine. We need to go through the process, to go through the bureaucracy, and then we'll get there. And part of this is also sorting out some of our sort of legacy issues around our Articles of Association. So the articles we have were done in the 1990s, and they're really good for an engineering club, if that's what you want to be. So get together, talk about stuff. They're not so good if you want to be a proper institute. So once again, one of the things that's long overdue is rewriting our Articles of Association so that they're actually fit for purpose, and furthermore comply with the current model articles. Because if you dig into all this stuff, as I sadly have had to do, hopefully no one else will have to do afterwards. But there's a concept of model articles of association for different kinds of company, and they take precedence over your articles if there's any kind of dispute or any kind of ambiguity. So it's quite important that you need to stay aligned to the current model articles of your time, and we haven't. So there's a bit of work to do just to bring ourselves back into line with those. And it's some of the modern things like just being able to do AGMs by Zoom, that kind of thing. It's all the stuff that we all do now, but we just need to get written down properly and get ratified. So we're doing that as part of this. There's also need to recognise some of the director roles as being directors in a different way that we currently do, and also giving ourselves some new powers. Once again, you have to have these written down so you can do them. So there's a bit of effectively tidy up, a bit of modernising. But it's all good stuff that will help us do better in the future. We're looking at a revised company structure. So as you'll have hopefully seen in the recent preview, there's an idea that we probably need to keep INCOSE UK Limited going, and then do something else around that and actually subsume it inside if that forms. That's more of an operational thing than anything else, because as you imagine, we have a lot of contracts, a lot of things going on, and changing the name when you're in the middle of doing stuff is just a bit funny sometimes. We're looking to have a clear interface with INCOSE, making it quite clear where the institute and the chapter starts. Once again, it has been a bugbear of mine through becoming a PEI, is that people accuse me of being resident of INCOSE. I'm not. And so having clear boundaries is just a good thing that we're going to do. And then the final thing is additional transitional work to be done. So things like putting in place a fellows scheme, that I'm sure is what I'll probably to keep running with as I step off the place and go to president. So there's stuff happening, but it's all good stuff. It's all stuff that will make us stronger and better. And some of it is quite long overdue. So at that point, that's kind of I guess the formal side of it done. At this point, we'd like to kind of reflect personally on kind of how it's been. And then we've got Q&A scheduled as well, but I think possibly if you want to ask questions as you go, that might be better. Otherwise, we'll just talk between ourselves for half an hour. So Kirsty, if you can lead off, please.
So, yes, it's nearly 6 years now that I've thought what a jolly good idea it would be to stand for president. And but we were talking about why I did it. And honestly, I have no idea what possessed me. It seemed like a good idea at the time, but I think it was purely that I wanted to make a difference and make an impact and give back to systems engineering. I'd really taken to INCOSE UK as an organisation. I'd done a stint as UCAB chair. I'd been chairing working groups. I've been engaged for not a huge amount of years actually, since 2013. But it just felt such a welcoming thing. And when there was an opportunity to stand for president, I wasn't sure that I was good enough. actually, and I was a little bit concerned about it. And I spoke to someone, I was sat next to them at the conference, and they were a council member themselves, actually, at the time. And they said, you don't have to be the best systems engineer in the room. You just need to be able to lead them. And I thought, well, you know, if I've got a vote of confidence from someone who knows the job, who's on the council already, then you know, why not give it a go? And so I got my company's backing, and I put my name forward, and the rest is history. What I've got out of it is absolute personal growth. The learning curve was enormous. The ability, you know, learning how to lead, learning how to run a business, having to inspire a volunteer group, because you can't be dictatorial. It's the growth personally has been enormous. And if I look back now, 6 years later, at the person I was then and the person that I was now, it's almost unrecognisable. The difference in my kind of leadership maturity, if you like. There are things which I just know now, which are almost part of my psyche, and my ability to make really rapid decisions that might be very impactful. I can just do it, and I really credit INCOSE UK with and my kind of my mentoring up through the president-elect and then being suddenly in charge. I really credit INCOSE UK with letting that happen. It did a huge amount for my reputation on the international stage. It did a huge amount for my reputation inside the business. So even though I've been very lucky, MBDA UK is a brilliantly supportive business. I was very lucky in that respect. But the acknowledgement of my abilities and skills and abilities, it grew tenfold partly because it was, well, if the professional engineering institution recognises this person, then they must be doing something right. But partly because I have developed as a person, and I've, you know, my skills and my abilities have developed. So it's made a huge difference to my personal career as well. So I look back on it now with there've been periods of you know, real, not frustration, but there was so much to do. There were so many priorities to juggle, and I look back on that, and especially when we were suddenly thrown into the deep end, when suddenly we lost our route to professional registration, and we had to make that call of, well, what do we do? And we registered with the Engineering Council. I look back on that with absolute pride. If I'd known what I was going to be facing at the start, I would have been terrified. But actually, whenever you got to a key point and a key decision, you were never on your own. You were always part of a team. There was always people to support you and people to go to. So it was really an amazing experience, and I've never felt as much a part of a team as I have as when I was you know, in that presidential position. And having in my case, I had Ian coming up behind me, and Ivan was the past president at the time. It was a great little team, and it's been, actually, I'm quite sad coming to the end of it now, that I've kind of watched Ian become me and Malcolm becoming Ian, and it's kind of quite bittersweet. The relief of finally maybe getting some personal time back, but also you know, watching these guys who came up behind you standing on what you did and making great strides. So for me, having that ability, because Ivan put the business on a great financial footing, he really strengthened our understanding of ourselves as a business and really got that really nailed down. That allowed me to be in a position where we could go to become a professional engineering institution, the Engineering Council, and that was my contribution. But that in turn allowed Ian to turn us into IFSI, and that'll be his contribution. I'm not quite sure what Malcolm's going to do, but I'm waiting with enthusiasm to see what that's going to be. So, yeah, as I said, so why I did it, because it just sort of felt the time was right. The time was now. and I wanted to contribute. So that's why I did it. What I got out of it, everything, you know, development, experiences, a team, friends, actually, friends. The amount of INCOSE people that are at my wedding, for example. And yeah, the highlights have actually been becoming that professional engineering institution, being part of the history of something which so many people look up to, and, you know, really gaining that experience and mentoring those, not only those on the council that have come along behind, but mentoring systems engineers generally now. You know, you're that role model. You're the person they're going to come to. They're going to look at you with big wide eyes, saying, "Oh, could I do that?" Yes, actually, they can. So it's that's been my highlights.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's been fun following in your footsteps, really. You say it has been like that long line of people who've all just kind of made the difference each time. I certainly look back and think, yeah, started with Ivan, went on with you. That whole idea of, no, this is a business. First and foremost, we're running a thing that has to keep going, has to be looked after properly and sort of nurtured and brought on. That, I think, has been probably our sort of, as the three of us, probably the biggest change we've made. And you can see it a mile off now in the way that we're doing things.
Yeah, I think that's been the joy, actually, where I think initially when it was, you know, years ago, when it was much more of a club, the president role was very different then. And what we found more recently, and certainly, you know, from Ivan onwards, is it has been this team handing a baton over, building, nurturing the business, building it, getting it in the right direction, and just keeping going. It's not, there's no sudden change of direction. Everyone is standing on what everyone else has done, and then building it forward. And it's really felt like you're handing over something you've nurtured to the next person, and you want to be there to help them continue with that nurturing. And it does feel like it's kind of passing the baton on, not few done that, I'm off, your problem now, bye.
That's funny. I stood for not dissimilar reasons. I mean, in terms of timing, I'd hit a point where I think I'd done my events director role two terms in a row. I was being offered roles to do internationally, having off the back of doing the Edinburgh conference. And I sort of took a step back and thought, what do I actually want to do here? And I sort of worked out, in fact, I think I worked out on a whiteboard, quite sadly, just whiteboarded out kind of where the different roles are, the actual sequence, said, right, what I need to do is stand for president-elect either next year or in 4 years' time, pretty much. Or it was that kind of, what do I do in between? So I kind of worked out timing-wise, the timing was there to do it. And actually, I was quite keen to do the president role whilst I was still young enough to actually do something else afterwards. So I didn't want it to be some kind of like, this is my retirement thing, I will do this, and then that's kind of my career on the downward slope, but look, I've got the badge now. I was quite keen to actually do it whilst I was still in a position where I could then hopefully do stuff to build on it. So it becomes less of an end of career thing, more of a kind of mid-career thing. Or mid to late career, I guess, being honest with myself. You know, the hair's on the way out, so time is marching. And really, I mean, I guess at the time, and this is before we'd become a PEI, I was really still on that idea that we had to kind of modernise, improve, and to generally kind of do things a bit more formally. It's having been on the council for many years, I was aware that whilst the events bit ran quite nicely, other bits just needed a bit of a kick sometimes. There were some things I was kind of less happy about, but wasn't my place to really jump up too much and go after. So I thought there were things I could definitely kind of get on a better footing. And of course, having got into the role, we then had the shock of the SCE collapse and discovering we had to either pack up all our bags and stop doing PI, or stop doing chartered status, or go forth ourselves and do it. And I was very happy that Kirsty was prepared to do that, and very happy to back her all the way. And that certainly was one of those team moments where we all had to get together to look, we are doing this, we are committing to it, we have a timetable, let's get on with it. Then of course we had COVID. So we had the joy of, yeah, that was really fun. So we had to, because at that point I picked up again the events thing as part of it being president-elect. We had to maintain to the venue at all times we were having a physical conference because we had a contract with them. But we had to plan for a virtual one because that was the only sensible option. But we had to kind of let everything play through. Otherwise, you'd be in breach of otherwise you'd be cancelling the contract, which would not be good. So there was a whole bunch of things to kind of play through, which once again it's all classic business type things that you just need to be aware of and alive to. So you're in a world where now things are slightly more grown up. And yeah, moving on, I took over, and we'd been rumbling for years about a different name. That's been an ongoing INCOSE UK itch that's never been scratched properly, and we never had one. We never had a good alternative. There's only really with the realization that because we're now a PEI, we might be able to crack it using the word institute, and that suddenly made everything kind of collapse down to, well, actually, how about this? And so in the end, my presidency has been defined in some ways by this idea that we should change, become an institute, and go forward and actually really take our own destiny properly. And I'm still hopeful that will all play through in good time before I jump off the end of the role. And that wasn't a plan. That wasn't the thing I intended to do before I stood. That was just an opportunity that came along that we thought, actually, we can do this. And we did the research, and it turned out we can. And then it was a matter of just getting everyone on board and on side. So there's been an awful lot of behind the scenes work to get to the point last year in September when we could actually start to go firm on this. And there's a lot more going on, which the good news is once we've done it, we've done it. So that should be in the past before anyone else steps up and takes over. So that will be embedded in due course. As Kirsty said, you get a lot out of it. You get a lot of new personal contacts. You get a lot of things to do that you never thought you'd have to do, that you just need to get on with and work out your way through. So you do develop that real kind of operational and business head as to kind of how to do things and kind of what the right course of action should be. And yeah, it just becomes second nature that there's certain things that have to work a certain way. It's, for me, been quite interesting going along to all of the Royal Academy Engineering Council things, because once again, in some ways, I'll emerge out of this being equipped to be a CEO of another institute, should I wish. Because I've covered all the ground that other people have to do. So it's almost an entire other career opportunity that lies in the distance somewhere as a result of having to sort of deal with this kind of thing. And yeah, just the whole idea of taking that more business-like approach. So it's not, as Kirsty said, it's not about being the best system engineer in the room. It's about just being able to get people in the right direction and get people focusing on the right things. That's another skill that you wouldn't otherwise pick up. So if I wanted to go into some kind of practice management type role in the future and sort of hang up my technical clogs and go and do people management, this would be a very, very useful thing to have done.
I have to say, where it's really helped is, currently I'm doing a lot of transformation work where you've got to lead people where this isn't their day job and they might not quite get it, and you've got to inspire. So I couldn't do that now the way I'm doing it if I hadn't had that INCOSE UK grounding.
No, I mean, I've got the MSP books and I do still use them to help my thought process, but yeah, there's a world of difference between what's in the book and then how to do it for real with real people. So that was me. Malcolm, your thoughts?
Yeah, so the new boy on the block, I guess. So as I'm only coming up to the end of my stint as president-elect, I've been sort of watching what goes on, but also getting very involved. So you get a lot to do. And I think, why did I do it? I keep asking myself that sometimes, but I'd been involved with the UCAB as a point of contact for WSP since, I think, 2013. So I had dipped a toe in sort of the joint meetings, so I'd seen what goes on at council and watched what people were doing ahead of me and thought, yeah, that's something I can do, and it's something I perhaps should do, because unlike the other two, I've waited till too late probably to do it. So I'm in a position where I really am looking to put back. I've been a systems engineer for quite a long time. I'm towards the further end of my career than the beginning of it. But I think I've gained a lot of experience that I can put into the role. And that's sort of one of the main reasons why I thought, yeah, like the others, I might not be the best systems engineer in the world, but I've got a lot of experience. And I've been leading big teams and things like that. So maybe this is something I can do and put back into the profession, give some time, give some effort, and help moving INCOSE UK on, or hopefully IFSI on, over the next, well, four and a bit years that I'll have as president and and then immediate past president. So I'd have to say it's been really enjoyable so far. It's daunting to start with, certainly. You know, once you put your name in the hat, you sometimes wonder, oh dear, what have I done now? But actually, once you're in, you're supported by a great team, both Ian and Kirsty and the rest of the council and our secretariat. They're all there to help. You're never on your own. Yes, you'll get asked to make decisions, but you can make them. You know, just go ahead, seek advice if you need to, but you're there to make decisions. So, as Ian spoke about ASEC, yes, that's been my responsibility now for the last couple of years. So the last one, yes, we were just coming out of COVID, and we had a lot of umming and ahhing about, to start with, at the beginning of last year, about how we do it. Were we going virtual again? Were we going to try and get a real event, so to speak, in person? We went for the latter, and you know, as luck would have it, I guess, at that point, we were able to deliver an ASEC, which I think was really good, and a lot of people enjoyed it, to get back out there at a point where people were free to move around and meet. And then this year, hopefully, will be even bigger and better, because we're getting more and more back to normal. So that, I think, in working with the events team, working with the technical director and the outreach director to pull together the ASEC, is really, it's really an accomplishment. You feel you've really accomplished something when you sort of get to the end of day 2 and everybody's going home, and you think, you sit down and you sort of wipe the sweat from your brow, and you think, we've done a good job. Not only have we made a lot of people, you know, got a lot of people together, shared some interesting thoughts amongst people, big networking event, had some great keynotes and things like that. But it's also a big money spinner for INCOSE UK as well. So it is something that you think, actually, this means a lot to us fiscally each year. So it's something big to be involved in, that really makes a difference to the business as well as to the society, if you like, or the institute. So that is one of the, I think, one of the biggest highlights so far, and we're well down the path for ASEC 2022 in Newcastle. So yeah, a lot of planning has gone on already. Most things are in place now. It's just making sure that we, you know, bring the booking system live, get everybody signed up, and then deliver a fantastic ASEC. I think, what am I looking forward to? I think getting more involved in the stuff that Ian is doing currently. Once we become IFC, there will be lots of things that we will be able to do that we might not be able to do under our current setup. Ian mentioned the sort of introduction of a fellowship scheme, like the other institutes. We can become more like our partners in the Engineering Council, with the same sorts of offerings as they have, but still having the reach into that international institution, institution that is INCOSE. So we will still offer all those things for people that want all the certification, but we are a professional engineering institution, and we will focus on professional registration and being able to offer our membership what value they want from INCOSE UK IFC going forward. I think it's probably enough. I think I've got a lot to do. I'm still learning, and you will learn all the way through, I shall think, as both Ian and Kirsty have said. So I've still got a while till I can wind down. The commitment is manageable. You need your company's backing, and mine, WSP, have stumped up. They've given me the time. So, you know, when you are spending days out the office, either at council meetings or other at ASEC or other things, they're fully supportive. And the other times that I need to devote to doing other bits and pieces, whether it's, you know, writing a policy or something like that, you can do some of it in your spare time, but sometimes you just need that time when you can devote half a day to something. So support from your employer is very important, and I've been lucky to have that. So I guess we throw it open to any questions from the audience.
So I'll ask one. So in terms of the time commitments, I'm looking at the drumbeat slide. That's looking at about 25 meetings or thereabouts a year. Now, one of the challenges for people in smaller businesses like myself in taking on some of these roles is obviously the financial commitments around travel and expenses, as well as the time. What's been the arrangement in terms of how many of those meetings are sort of in person versus remote these days? And as I do seem to be mainly around the south of England.
Okay, so the most of the at the bottom, the Engineering Council stuff, Royal Academy and the JLBs are all pretty much virtual. So there's been, I think the Royal Academy is going back to one physical PEC a year, but the rest in virtual because everyone knows each other, so you don't need to actually physically meet up. It's just nice to do it once a year just to actually get that bit of contact and for new people to get slightly more welcomed. Obviously UCAB is the thing the president-elect goes to, not the president, but then yes, as president-elect you do pick up that extra bit. And they've been toying between virtual and physical for a while now, I think, Mark, haven't they? Because
yes,
they're doing it virtually because actually it worked quite well for most people.
I think virtually worked well. I think there was probably a better attendance because, as you say, Tim, people not being able to travel, take the whole day out, and sometimes the distance may have been precluding them from attending. The next one is in person, and I think it's something that we'll discuss with the UCAB chair to see, but I guess it's going to be a mix going on, but there will be some in person, but then it's something that we can drive the right way depending on, you know, how the membership feels about it.
It's nice to meet up, but equally, once you know everyone, you can get an awful lot done virtually. It's not a lot easier for everyone. I mean, certainly for the council meetings, we had, well, okay, so on the board and council, all of the directors' meetings, the sort of board meetings, if you like, they all happen virtually. So we just jump onto a Teams call. That's fine. We do it all remotely, not a problem. The council meetings, we were doing them all through Zoom. We've now since gone back to physical. That's not to say we couldn't go back the other way, because once again, you don't always all need to be. It's nice to be in the same place. It's not essential, and I think most meetings nowadays there's at least one person that can't make it, so wants to kind of jump in through Teams and Zoom, wants to be there for part of the meeting. So it's still a bit of a work in progress. I guess once again, if you don't know people, then doing it physically is better because then you get that rapport much faster. But those of us who've known each other for years, we just jump on the thing, get on with it. And what we have found is we've done a lot more little impromptu kind of 1 hour council meetings throughout the year to get stuff done than we ever used to do. So our rate of progress for getting things done has really sped up through COVID. Because we haven't had to wait for the next meeting. We just look, come on guys, we can discuss this now, get on the thing, record it, off we go. So we had a lot of quite crunchy things that took place in 2020 and 2021 that we just got on with because we could.
The challenge, I think, to some degree, is bigger companies tend to sponsor the expenses being of taking on these roles, whereas I think the INCOSE expenses policy is a reluctant one at best.
Can I ask a question? So I think you've all said that to be president, you didn't need to be the best systems engineer in the room, but I can imagine that there are there have been quite a lot of stakeholder needs that have been difficult to reconcile, and requirements that are conflicting, particularly, I guess, you know, as you've negotiated the path between PEI and INCOSE. And I remember some of the more pokey questions about subscription costs and things at ASEC last year. I just wondered, you know, how have you had a particular approach that you've all fallen into in terms of seeking to resolve those types of conflicts, and has, you know, systems thinking and so on played a part in that?
Well, yeah, I can answer that. We listen, and the approach we've always taken is we've taken very seriously our members' views. We've taken very seriously our UCAB views, and our UCAB is really excellent. They are our formal sounding board, if you like, because they represent most of the major organisations who employ our members. And so, yes, it is treading a path. Yes, we're applying systems thinking. Yes, we're applying systems engineering, but not in a formal way. We're not sitting there doing doors databases of the requirements for our members, for example. You have to be careful. If you're a bit too systems engineering about it, you start to lose some of the systems thinking bit. So it's not a process way of working, but yeah, it's the fundamental things we do get right is we do try and understand every viewpoint. We do try and tread that path, but we always listen. We always explain, we always communicate, and we find by doing that, you bring people along with you.
Mm.
Yeah, certainly your stakeholder engagement skills will go up a few notches.
Yeah.
Mm.
And even, I mean, it's interesting with the events and the side of it, because once again, every event you'll get complaints. There's always complaints, and part of the joy of the events role is working out which complaints are just the complaints you always get and which ones are actually the important ones. So you do, there is that kind of, you know, you has with everything, you can't listen to every single stakeholder and please them all. So you have to choose some lines somewhere, but
yes,
it's about kind of having a credible approach you're trying to follow so that people will come with you. So we're getting towards the end of time. There's still time for more questions if there are any more.
What do you think on average the amount of time you spend on INCOSE work in a year is?
Yeah, it's a good question. I've not probably totted it up every year.
Sometimes it's best not to think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, there's a bunch of things that are kind of unavoidable things that happen during working time that you just have to do in the working week at working times because you need to get it done. So in this could be an example. This is happening now, and it'll probably end up on my time sheet somewhere. Because you can't be expected to do everything in your own time at weekends and evenings, because then you'll have no life left. So there has to be some balance there. Equally, you don't have to do it all yourself. There's a team around you. Part of this is working out what is that triage of what needs to be done, and then passing out to people to get things done, and just accepting that everyone's a volunteer. So all you can really do is just give yourself the time to get things done and accept some things won't happen. And don't get too arsy about it because we're all volunteers. We're all doing the best we can. So it's that being fairly grown up with things, I guess.
Yeah, I think when it was when we were becoming a PEI, that was tough. That really was tough. I lost a lot of evenings and weekends on that, purely because from scratch, well the SEE helped us, but we had to create the entire process set and everything, and we only had something like 6 to 9 months to do it, and that time scale was almost unheard of. So I lost a lot of weekends there, but that was a really exceptional circumstance. So, you know, typically it comes down to it's not just attend the meetings and that's it. You're not going to get away with just attending the meetings. There's going to be stuff. There's going to be stuff in the middle, but a lot of it is you can squeeze it in. You know, it's nothing's ever. We want to move as fast as we can, but everyone understands that life does get in the way. And I had to take a big step back partway through because I got long COVID. So there was one point, kind of beginning of last year, where I was really, really struggling. And it was, I'm really sorry, Ian, I'm struggling here. I'm not going to be able to be as forthcoming as I might. And that's fine. You know, you give what you can and then you don't. I think in the whole history of INCOSE UK, we've only ever had, I think, 2 iffy council members. where words had to be had. But very few and far between.
Yeah, I'd echo all of that. You can, yeah, sometimes it's, you know, after work that you need to do something, but as Kirsty and Ian said, you do what you can. You can prioritize some of it if you've got that support, and do it and attend the meetings and things like that. They're the big chunks of time that Ian showed on the drumbeat, that you're going to have to, you know, give, if you like. The rest of it you've got more control over, but you pick and choose when you're going to do it. And if something big comes up at work, people will understand that, yeah, they're your employer. And without them, you wouldn't be doing what you were doing anyway. So, you know, things have to take priority, but you discuss them and say, you know, that one's going to have to drop off for a week or two or something like that. So it just like being at work, really, you know, you know, you prioritize stuff based on what you think is, you know, urgent and important.
Malcolm,
I've got a very situation this week, actually. We've got the council meeting is on Thursday. It's in Swansea. I have to be in Portsmouth the day before. I cannot physically get there from the Portsmouth site I'm at to the Swansea site I need to be at for INCOSE. It would take me about 7 hours to do it. I just can't make it, and I'm actually really gutted because I so wanted to go. The view's amazing because it's right on top of the thing. But yeah, and so I've had to apologise and say I'm really sorry. This one I can't do. So it does happen.
Just a quick one. I'm conscious we're out of time, but you know, reflecting on the roles you've fulfilled and the amount of, you know, I suppose discretionary effort you've had to put into it. Does INCOSE UK have the ambition and the growth potential to get to the stage where we actually have an employed CEO and, you know, an enlarged team? And, you know, how many years off do you think that is, if that is the case?
It has the potential. It absolutely has the potential. And
does.
we've spoken in the past actually about we would love to do this.
Because it feels like you've come through that sort of startup and an SME stage, and you're at, and it's still at that stage where it's quite growth takes a lot of extra effort to get to that longer term footing where you,
But the big game changer was the ability to offer our own route to professional registration. That was a huge game changer, and we've got an awful lot more interest. We suddenly grew up with that one, and it was almost an overnight success. COVID was tough. It hit a lot of institutions, and it hit a lot of them a lot worse than it hit us. You know, we managed it reasonably well. Yes, we took an absolute hit on the hybrid conferences, but that was, you know, we came out of it in a less difficult position than some of the others did. The potential out there is absolutely to grow. I think the IFSI will make a big difference, because at the minute it's hard to explain what INCOSE UK is, and the INCOSE relationships cause all sorts of problems. Institute for Systems Engineering, I think that's going to be another growth promotion. It is, you know, there's too few engineers coming through the system at all times. We've got that ability. We know that market's out there, but it's that nurturing, and we've just got to keep pushing, keep growing, keep becoming, you know, that next big institution, and it will come.
And I presume on that, IFSI has a different financial relationship potentially with INCOSE Central, which opens up more possibilities.
There are certainly, in redefining our relationship, there's opportunities to have a good solid chat with them about how we'd like to do things, and changes we'd like to make. And it's just about what, and once again, it'll be another big stakeholder engagement exercise, but also a proper business-like negotiation. So we've been to the negotiation and change things before, which had to lay out, here's where we are, here's what we will do if we can't get some movements, here's what we'd like to do, where do you want to meet us? It's been done before.
Yep.
Ian's quite handy at that.
Well, last time it wasn't. Yeah, last time was a bit easier. But yeah, and we are of course the biggest chapter in INCOSE and the best. There must be some leverage to that somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, there's plenty of scope moving forward. That's for sure. And as Kirsty and Ian said, we have put and are putting things in place that hopefully will increase our growth. And then there's more things that we can do that will make us even more popular, if you like, because we do want to be the institution for systems engineering. We want people coming here, not to IET. So we'll go and grab them when they're still at university and things like that. We'll start looking at all the sorts of things that the other institutions do, that will probably be easier for us to do under a new banner. But again, we'll have to go and talk to INCOSE on some things. Some things we'll just be able to do. And if we can, and we feel it's to the benefit of our members and to the business, then we'll do them.
Right, so any further questions, or should we wrap up here? Gone slightly over time. We started slightly late, so.
Yeah.
Okay, so finishing in 3, 2, 1, and thank you very much,
Thank you very
guys.
much.
Hopefully you got some
Cheers.
Cheers.
Good to see you all.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.